Hello lovelies, and welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to blend two things that I love, fountain pens and bookbinding. I'm going to show you how to make two cute little jotters that are super simple, super quick to make, and will go a long way for having your own creations made with whatever paper you love. But today I'm featuring Tomoe River paper. So just when you think I'm done at the end, stay tuned for a little outtake where I show you a little something about this journal. So I'll see you on the other side. Thanks for being here, and let's get to it. All right, friends. So if you're new here, welcome. I'm glad that you stopped by. I hope you'll stay. For my tried and true folks, I know that you already know I am a bookbinder by trade, we'll say, and a fountain pen collector, enthusiast, and lover of all things fountain pen. And my absolute favorite paper to use with fountain pens is Tomoe River paper. You've heard me talk about buying it in loose sheets. I've given you links to go buy your own in loose leaf sheets. I've talked about the journals and all the things that you can get that have Tomoe River paper for your fountain pens, and I've talked about the difference that it makes in the experience of working with a fountain pen. So if you've not got enough of me talking about that, here's one more video where I'm going to actually show you how to make your own small little jotter notebook filled with whatever paper you want, but I will be using Tomoe River paper. So this paper has the reputation in the fountain pen community as being fountain pen friendly, but also like superior. Now, those of you that are aware of the latest, we'll call it saga, or maybe scandal, I don't know, controversy, conversation, discussion going on in the fountain pen world about the Hobonichis and the paper drama that has happened there. This is one of the reasons why I'm showing this video as well, is because you can get Tomoe River paper and make your own journals. Now, I'm not saying that your journals are going to be as amazing as, say, a Hobonichi. They're not going to have printed things on them, but it will give you an opportunity to make a little journal or a big journal, whatever your choice is, because this paper is thin and you can squeeze a lot of sheets into one journal, and it still will be, a reasonable size. But I thought that I would just show you a quick and simple, really easy journal. And I'm really gearing this video towards people who are fountain pen lovers, fountain pen ink lovers, fountain pen paper lovers, but maybe you've never bound your own journal. For those of you that have been following me for, I don't know, since 2013, and you know that I am a bookbinder and a book artist, and I do this work all the time. Many of you probably have taken classes from me. My 7 books in 7 days is probably one of my most popular courses. I'll make sure there's a link down below. And whether you're using Tomoe River paper or any other paper, that class shows you 7+. In fact, there's probably more like 14 books in there, but showing you how to make your own journals. So before we jump in, I'll just tell you some of the supplies that I have out on the table. And, some of you will message and say I'm talking too fast, and you can just slow it down, rewind, all the things. The other piece of advice I have for you is let this be easy. And one more piece of advice, treat this, if this is your first one, treat it as a prototype. You can make more of them. Treat this one as your prototype. You might even want to use a different paper to try it out for the first time, instead of using your Tomoe River paper and making any sort of like mistakes or having an issue. So I'm going to keep it simple for you. I've got 2 different kinds or 2 different sizes of Tomoe River paper here. I have this one that comes from a company called the Japanese Paper Place, but I want to say that I bought it actually at a shop in Tennessee, Paper, Ink, and Arts. I'll put a link down for them below as well. But it came in 25 sheets. This is the cream colored. I don't know the GSM on this one, but I'll be able to tell when I take it out of the package. However, I'm probably not going to use this one today, but I wanted you to see that it does come in the 8.5 by 11 size for those of you that prefer larger journals. And I'm going to be using this one that came right over from Amazon. And this one is the A5 sheets, and there's 100 of them in this pack. And this is the 52 GSM. So, in the cream colored. So I'm going to be using that. So that's my paper. If you want to test this out before you make a journal using your Tomoe River, then I suggest using just printer paper or whatever you have on hand. Okay. I've also got some offcuts here of some art pieces that were part of a project but didn't quite do, go into the project all the way. So I've got some pieces here. This obviously is not for making the journal, but I'm going to use it for something else at the end. This is probably going to be my cover. And for your cover, you want something that's somewhat, heavier. This is like a cardstock, a heavy cardstock. And then something on the inside pages. This is just my preference. That is more, a little thinner. So this is like sketchbook paper that has been painted. I started a painting on it and then I never finished it, and I probably won't go back to it. I probably should, but I'm feeling like I want it to be a part of this journal, so I'm going to use it for that. Now, other things you could use and that I often use and really love using, this is just some packing paper that came in a package that I recently received from an Etsy shop owner. But you can get this in any kind of packagings and things, it's just brown craft paper. You could also use something like this, but I do suggest using something that is on the heavier side for the outside because the paper itself is so thin. You want to have something that's a little more sturdy to hold that paper. So now I am definitely not someone who does a lot of measuring. I like to eyeball things when I'm creating, but I brought a ruler out and I'm actually going to be using that ruler to size my paper, but not in the way you might think. I've got what is called a bone folder paper creaser. If you are somebody that does not have one of those, you can use the back handle of a pair of scissors for the same purpose. I've got a jumbo mega paper clip here to clip my papers together and hold them as I am sewing them. Yes, I'm going to show you two ways, a sewing way and a non-sewing way. I've got some double-sided tape and a glue stick just in case I want to adhere something to something. I've got a little roll of washi tape to hold down my thread. I've got a pencil for making marks and a cutting tool if I decide I'm going to cut, but I might end up just tearing my paper. A pair of scissors to snip my thread. I've got a piece of ribbon here for either wrapping the journal as like a closure or for another little technique that I'm going to show you. I also have a needle that I will be using for sewing, and this is not a standard bookbinding needle. This is actually more closely, probably more close to a sashiko or embroidery needle. And then I have I have a set of journals here that are going to help me with the sizing. It's just a grouping of journals. OMG. I thought I was out of these and I just found a blank one. Oh no, I'm so excited. Okay, that's a total blooper moment. I'm leaving it in because you cannot make this up. I literally just messaged about this, or I posted about this in one of my other videos, maybe my last Fountain Pen Friday. I talked about how my ink journal, where I keep my running sort of list of my inks and pens and the cleaning dates, that I was about to run out. And look at what I just found in my stash. That's crazy pants. Thank you, universe. Okay, so back to our regularly scheduled conversation. Find a little Jotter notebook that you want to use for the sizing, and that will help you. So I'm going to use that one for my sizing because I like that size a lot. And also, you could just like the paper determine the size, which I actually might end up doing now that I've said that. Okay, the other thing I have is a bunch of bookbinding thread here. This is waxed linen thread, so it already has a little wax on it, which makes it glide through the holes of the sewing stations a little easier. You could use really strong dental floss. Don't get the cheap stuff, but some really strong dental floss, you could use that. You could also use embroidery floss if you wanted to. So lots of options. I would just say for Tomoe River paper, because it is so thin, I would definitely use something that is more slick or waxy so that it does not rip the paper. So while the paper feels strong to us in terms of, you know, fountain pen usage and bleed through and all of that, the paper still is paper and still can rip pretty easily. So I invite you to make sure you have a needle that's not too big, too fat, too wide, and some thread that isn't too thick. All right, so the first thing I am going to do, let's move all of this over to the side. I think the first thing I'll do here, should get all of that out of the way, is open up my paper and figure out how many sheets I'd like. So this size feels like a good size, so I might, you know, look at just how many sheets are in here. All right, there are 20 sheets. So just going to take this out. I don't know that I've pulled out of this one before, so I may have a full 25 in here. Oh, this is actually 100 sheets in here, so I know I don't need all of these. This feels like a good amount. Whatever this is, let's just count it. Okay, that's 15 sheets. That feels like enough. And if I were using the 8.5 by 11 sheets, I might have to tear it down, cut them down, make a different size. But in fact, this is the beauty of making your own journal, is that you can actually size the journal to the paper. And that is amazing. So this little journal is roughly the same size there. So I'm going to just fold. Now, a lot of people will just take and fold this whole stack. I don't like to do that. With Tomoe River paper, I like to take about 3 sheets at a time and fold them short edge to short edge. So you've got your long edge and you've got your short edge. So we're going to put the short edges together. And I'm using my bone folder to just crease that, and I'm going to sit that over to the side. And I'm just going to keep doing that where I have 3, roughly 3. And because these are so thin, if I were using watercolor paper, I would absolutely do about 1 or 2 sheets at a time. But with Tomoe River, because it's so thin, you can get away with doing a few, and you won't get what we call page creep. Page creep is what I'm trying to avoid. And if you do a big stack of papers at once, you get a lot of page creep. And that just means that if I had a lot of pages and I fold them over, I would be able to see a lot of graduation here. It'd be like, you know, the pages would be creeping back on themselves. So when I fold paper, first of all, it's super meditative for me, but my process is jog the papers to get them all lined up. Fold the paper short edge to short edge. And I hold with one hand and then I come to the center and just go out. Now, I've done that with each of these, but I was moving quickly, so you may not have noticed that. But that is the way I like to do it. It just has become habit for me. So now I am going to open each of these up and nest them inside of each other to make one stack. Again, because this paper is so thin, this is an easy way to do this. And because we've made that because we've made that fold really thin, we won't get as much. I'm not saying we won't get any page creep, but we won't get as much as if we had folded them all together at once. Now, if you don't like that page creep, you could, if there is some and you don't like it, you can always just take a ruler and line it up. Take something like a box cutter or an X-Acto knife or craft knife and cut those edges off if you want them to be perfect and lined up that way. I am not going to worry about that too much because I'm making this for me, not for anyone else. But that is one thing you could do. You could cut that edge off if you wanted to have a flushed, straight edge at the end there. Okay, now with Tomoe River paper, again, it's really thin. So if you're doing that, I highly recommend, first of all, a metal ruler to do it, because that's going to give you a lot more leverage here. I recommend standing, holding that, and bringing this over and starting way out here before you even get to the paper. Start up here and just cut, slice, and keep it held down until you get them all sliced and off. Okay. All right, so now we've got the papers all together. The next step is for me to figure out the size of my cover. So, wow, that's crazy pants that that's going to be a perfect fit. So, because I know that I need my cover to wrap around this, I'm going to measure this. I'm eyeballing that. 1, 2, 3, 4, roughly 4, almost 4.5. So, because of that, I'm going to go 9 inches because I want to fold it in half. Ooh, I kind of like this side better. Let's do that. So I'm going to bring my ruler over, measure twice, cut once. And I'm not even going to cut it, I'm going to tear it. I love that look on the edge there, that little deckled edge. So then I'm going to take that and I'm going to do short edge to short edge, just like I did with the journals, with journal pages. Coming to the center and flattening that out, then bringing in my bone folder, paper creaser, noticing I got a little paper curl from where this was. Okay, so then I take my cover and my papers and just make sure they fit into my covers. Nice, nice, nice. Now there's a little bit of overhang there and I'm not really liking that, but that's my fault. I did measure it that way. So I think what I'm going to do before I do any of that, I also don't like how white this is, just so stark white. So this is where something like this comes in. I'm going to make another one. So I am going to measure this piece to fit right on the inside. And I'm just using the journal cover itself. Now, you could use scrapbook paper, I didn't say that in the beginning, but you could totally use scrapbook paper. Any decorative paper you might have gotten in subscription kits. Something that if you have some vellum, you could use vellum. I know many of you have lots of little journaling tools over there. So I am going to, yeah. So at this point I could use double-sided tape or glue stick, and I think for the sake of ease and doing this quickly, I'm going to use some double-sided tape. I'm not going to tape, well, yeah. So the double-sided tape will add an even create another little layer in there. And that layer creates even more sturdiness for those pages. I'm just going to do one going across. So whenever I use double-sided tape, I like to come in with my bone folder and just do a little bit of burnishing so that it will adhere, so that I know that tape is adhered. Then I'm just going to peel that tape off, peel off the first layer here. Double-sided tape is like one of the most brilliant inventions ever next to fountain pens. I love that I can use double-sided tape on my projects. All right, so I don't know that I have a preference really, but I'm going to start at one corner and lay that down, and then just kind of line that up, going down gently. And then slowly. And I'm noticing that I'm off just a little bit, and this is that moment where I tell you we have to embrace imperfections in book arts. When you're making handmade journals, you are not a machine. It doesn't need to look like a machine did it. So I definitely invite you to embrace the imperfection, and I'm going to take my ruler and shore that up a little bit. I'm actually only going to do the bottom and top edges. Ooh, that's a lot. Because I am going to come back in a moment and cut my left and right edge. All right, so let's just make sure this still can close and fold. Loving it very much. And I really want this to be the front cover. So now I've got my, now that I like better without all that white on the inside. Yes, 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 yes. Okay, so I'm going to sew this first, and then I will cut my extra bits off. That way I have all of the pieces in place once I've done the sewing. Now there are lots of tools you can use for this next part. They are called, the official name is an awl, A-W-L, and it's a pokey tool. It has a long needle-like tool on one end and a handle on the other. You could also, if you're really in a pinch and you don't have something, you could use your needle. I would just tell you to put something on the end of that needle, like maybe even like a cork or something that you can use to grip that and hold that. I've seen people do this with push pins. You know, whatever works for you. All right, so here is the construction of the book. We've got our pages, we've got our cover, and your cover could be more super simple than mine. It could literally be, like I said, craft paper from a packaging, from a box. So this is where I make sure all my pages are in the center, and then I'm going to clip them all together just to hold that. And then the idea here is that you're going to come in from one end about 1/2 inch, from the other end about 1/2 inch, and then a middle, a hole in the middle. So what I like to do, I'm eyeballing it. You can absolutely bring in your ruler and your pencil and mark 1/2 inch, and then from this end 1/2 inch, and then just eyeball or measure what the middle would be. Okay, I've done this so many times that I just eyeball it. All right, so we got about 1/2 inch. So I like to put my awl in place, close the lid down, and push that through. You can see how it comes out right on the spine. If you don't push it down, sometimes you'll get it coming out on the top or bottom of the book, which you don't want. I'm going to repeat that here. I'm going to come in about 1/2 inch, lay my awl in place, close the lid down, and push. And this helps get that right on the edge there, right on the spine. Then I'll come here to the middle-ish and do the same thing. Close it down and push. And what I'm doing is making the holes where my stitching will take place. So now that I have those 3 holes in, I'm going to grab my needle and a thread. I think I'll just go with something. That feels good. That's kind of my colors that I love. And so you need enough thread to go 3 times. So I'm gonna go the height of my book 3 times. So 1, 2, 3, and a little extra for good measure. Not too much extra, but a little. Cut that off. Thread my needle. You always want to make sure you have a needle that can fit the thread and vice versa. The thread can actually go through your needle easily. All right, so I've got that. So here is the stitching portion of this journal. You can start on the inside or the outside. I'm going to demonstrate from starting on the inside. So from the inside hole in the middle, you're going to go through, come out the back, and you're going to pull that until you have about, I like to leave about that much. That's probably a little over 1 inch. This is where your washi tape can come in. I've done so many of these that I no longer use the washi tape for this, but I want to show you how you might do it if you are a beginner. So that will keep this thread from coming through. You don't want it to come through, otherwise you're not actually sewing the signature together, not sewing the papers together. So I've come in through the middle. So my thread is hanging out of the back. I'm going to choose either the top or the bottom hole. It doesn't matter which one. I like to keep the lid closed because that's how I made my hole, with the lid closed, and it'll just make it easier for my needle to go back in and find the right place. So I shimmy that through. I'm not pulling too hard. It might look like I am, but I'm just doing a gentle shimmy until it comes all the way through. Because again, Tomoe River paper is thin and you don't want to rip it too much, which I have done many times and may do tonight. So you're going to pull that until it's taut, not too tight. You don't want to rip this. After all, it is just paper. So don't pull too tight, but make sure it's nice and taut. You don't want it loosey-goosey and flapping around back there. I'm going to go all the way across to the other empty hole and go through to the outside. And again, I'm going to pull taut so that that line in the middle is nice and taut and not just flopping about in there. And then I'm going to come back in through the middle. Back in through that middle hole. This is what we call a 3-hole pamphlet stitch for those of you new to bookbinding, and or the butterfly stitch. And we call it the butterfly stitch because we got 2 wings, 1 on each side. So now I can, oh, sorry, I didn't say what I did. So I took my needle and I made sure that I have 1 piece of string on the right hand side of this middle thread and 1 piece on the left hand side. so that there's a piece on each side. I'm going to take that little piece of washi tape up. And then I'm just going to grab those wings and just kind of pull them at an angle, not pulling too much, just a little bit to make sure everything is nice and tight, outside and in. And then I'm going to make a double and or square knot, whichever one, whatever you like to call that. And that knot anchors that middle line of thread and keeps it nice and secure. And then I'm just going to snip those wings a little bit. And my book is sewn together. I can take my clip off. And what I like to do, because this paper is so thin, I like to kind of take half of it and just smooth it out right along the spine. Just little bits at a time. And then I'll do the same thing on the back side. Just smoothing that down. Okay. And then I can close my book. And I usually will bring my bone folder back over because now I've added a bunch of bulk to that. So I'm just going to do that. Now, I want to even that out. So here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to open it up. Going to bring over my, I'm not trying to cut the Tomoe River paper, just the cover. So I'm just lining it up. Do a couple of swipes with my knife here. So now I've got that edge nice and trimmed. And then I'm going to do the same thing. Just open that paper up to the other side and do the same thing here. And so this is absolutely, before I do that, this is absolutely customizing the journal. But another way you might do that, if you really want to make sure you're getting it even with this other piece, is you might want to take that piece and close it down and use the edge of the journal cover, which means you might get a little bit of your Tomoe River paper. Just little slivers of it. And now you've got a nice, crisp, clean edge. And you've got a cool little journal filled with the best paper on the planet. Okay, so that's one method. I'm not going to do the other little piece there. I think that'll be enough for now. The other thing I want to show you what you can do with this. I'm going to take a few more sheets of paper here. And I'll speed through this because you've already seen me fold paper. So I'm just going to take a few sheets, not too many. And I'll speed through this process. So I folded some sheets of Tomoe River paper. I did a nice crease on my edges so that it's nice and crisp. I folded a piece of that same paper that I used for the inside cover. And man, I really love all that blue. And so instead of sewing, so for those of you who are a little squeamish around the sewing, you're like, I'm not doing all of that, Kiala, that is too much. Then I invite you to try this technique. All right, so we've got the paper folded. We've got a cover piece folded. So you could then take this and take yourself a little piece of ribbon. You could do this with ribbon or you could do this with thread. I don't really like doing it with thread, but I'll demonstrate it with thread just because I want you to see how. So I would get a good amount of thread here. I don't know what I did with my scissors. So I'm going to take a good amount of thread. I'm going to double it up. And just for those of you who are curious, this thread is about it's about 18 inches long when doubled, so twice that. So you've got the paper, you've got the cover, and we'll just pretend that that cover is sized properly. And then you're just going to take your thread and tie it together around the outside of the book, from the inside to the outside. Let me try to get that a little more even. And this is a temporary binding. This binding is not meant, I mean, it can last. In fact, I'll show you a couple of ways I've done this where it can last. But it's meant to be like a temporary binding that holds the papers in. You can notice I haven't done a great job of tying that together. It could be a little bit tighter. Let's try that again. Do a better job. Get that just a little tighter. And I usually like to come to the top of mine and tie it, but the middle works as well. So I'm just holding that as tight as I can. That wax linen thread is a little slippery, so this works really well with ribbon, because ribbon is, you know, you can tell that it's not so slippery. So this is being really finicky here. It's not making itself out to be an easy task, mostly because I probably need another pair of hands that can hold this thread as I try to make my knot. Ooh, I am really challenging myself here. Okay, let's see. We're gonna do the best we can, and we're gonna just trust that you all get the picture. You get what I'm doing here, because it just keeps getting loose. And we don't want it that loose. So you don't want it that loose, but for the sake of demonstration, right? So now you've got some paper and some pages that you can work with, and you can take them out. It's kind of like making it almost like a little traveler's notebook in essence. But you would want that to be a little bit tighter than that. Here's an example. Here's an example. And so I use ribbon, but I also use the little leather piece of little leather strapping there. But it basically holds in all of my papers. My papers are secure. They're not going to fall out. Well, that paper wasn't secure, but the pages that are meant to be, right, they're not going to fall out. So that's another thing that you can do. But again, that is a temporary binding. That's not meant to be permanent. It's meant, I mean, it can be. I've had this in here for 3 years, I think. But I also don't use it every day and touch it every day. So there's that. So those are two ways that you could bind yourself a little journal made with Tomoe River paper. And so now you could use this as a little ink jotter. You could use this, put it in your purse, your back pocket, your go bag, your everyday carry. And if you've sized it properly, it might just fit inside of one of your journals. And I haven't. I would have to cut a little more of that off if I wanted it to fit in this particular carrier. So there you have it. Fountain pen inks meet bookbinding. Fountain pen papers meet bookbinding, and you can make your own little journal. I love doing this. It brings me so much joy. I hope you all will give it a try and let me know if you do. I'd love to see what you create. If there's a way you can let me know that, I'm happy to find you and follow you over on Instagram. If that's where you are, you can send me pictures, you know, in whatever way you can figure out how to get it to me. But have fun, play, make your own journals. Don't wait for the other big companies to make them for you. You can make any shape, any size, based on the paper that you have available to you. So find the paper that you like. If you want to make a bigger journal, get the bigger size of paper. If you like this size, get an A5 stack of paper and make yourself a little journal. All right, friends, Have a beautiful rest of your Friday or whenever you're watching this, and I will see you in all the places and spaces that we share. Be sure to check out the links below. I will link to the Tomoe River paper. I will also link to my 7 books in 7 days, where I teach you 7 different bindings that you can use for almost any paper that you love. Okay? Take good care, stay creative, and I'll see you soon. Bye. All right, lovelies, I know I said I was done, but I couldn't leave you with that journal looking janky the way it was looking. So I had to come and show you what I'd done. So I came in and I actually tied this a lot tighter, and I tied it up at the top. I think you heard me say in the video that I usually tie it at the top, and you saw me show this one where it's tied at the top. And that's just because it actually holds a lot better if that knot is not trying to be in the center but is in the top. So I came in and I redid that. I cut the thread down a little because there was a lot of extra hanging out. But my journal, I also added on the inside, because that paper was so thin, I just wanted to reinforce it. I added a little bit of that brown packing paper I kept showing you throughout the video. So I added that, just used glue stick. And so now I've got a little journal, and I can slip these out when they're all filled up and slip in a new set when I'm ready. So I also went ahead and edged this and shaved it down a little bit so that they are a little cleaner edges. And this journal, I am happy to say, I believe could potentially fit into this one if I wanted it to. But I'm kind of liking it as something to just throw into my bag and have as just a little everyday carry. So that was I wanted to show you that. And then I want to give you one little bonus tip here when it comes to making your own journals. See how this won't lay down? No matter what I do, it just doesn't want to do that. Now I have a paper press, so I'm going to put it under my paper press, and that will help. But because I used paper that is going what we call against the grain, this paper would prefer to be folded this way, not this way. Like it doesn't want to go like this. It wants to go this way, but I'm trying to make it go this way. And so the paper is resisting, as paper tends to do when you're trying to make it do something it doesn't want to do. So even if I try to say, oh, well, this is going to be the front, it's going to keep doing that same thing. So it is one way that I'd like to remedy that is to create what I call a belly band. And so this little strip that I had, that I shared with you, I'm going to size it so that it fits around the book. Not too tight, because I want to be able to slip it on and off. And so I'm just doing some folds. You can get super fancy with this. There is a mathematical way to do this, but I am showing you the non-mathematical way so that it stays easy and simple. And so I just need enough to come like that. So I'm just going to cut that. I'm going to grab my double-sided tape. And in the bookbinding world, we call this a belly band, what I am creating. I'm creating a little band that's going to go across the body, the belly of the book. Now remember I said you don't want it to be too tight, so when I adhere this, I am going to have just a little bit of slack, not too much. When I say a little, I mean very little. So I'm going to hold that, I'm going to fold that over, and I'm just going to make sure I have a little bit of slack in there. Push that down. And I like to just come and kind of square that off a little bit by doing that. And this one's more rounded, so round it on that end, kind of square it off there. And now I've got a belly band that helps my book stay closed and not flop all over the place. And when I'm ready to use it, I just slide it off. And when I'm ready to be done with it, I just slide it back on. Now, for For those of you who already know that when we start filling up these journals, they get chunky and the paper starts to do a crinkly thing and it blossoms. And when that happens, you can just make yourself a new belly band to fit the new size. So that is my pro tip for you today and a little bit of a bonus. All right. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, everybody.